Scientists spent 3 years testing 89 different drought-resistant crops in conditions that would kill most plants. Temperatures hit 120 degrees. No rain for 6 months straight. Soil moisture dropped to levels that make concrete seem wet. 88 crops failed or barely survived, but one plant, a 4,000-year-old desert bean that the Tohono O'odham people have grown since before the pyramids were built, didn't just survive. It thrived. And when researchers measured the final yields, this ancient crop beat the best modern drought-tolerant varieties by 420%. The agricultural industry has spent billions developing climate-resistant crops, yet the answer was growing in the Sonoran Desert all along. What these researchers discovered about tepary beans will change everything you think you know about farming in a water-scarce world. In 2021, Dr. Linda Parker and her team at the University of Arizona launched the most comprehensive drought-resistance study in agricultural history. They weren't just testing a few varieties in a greenhouse. This was a 3-year, multi-million-dollar project designed to find crops that could survive the climate crisis. The parameters were brutal by design. Each test plot received exactly 2 inches of water per year, less than what most desert cacti need to survive. Daytime temperatures were allowed to soar past 115 degrees Fahrenheit. Night temperatures dropped to near freezing during winter months. The soil was standard agricultural clay with no amendments, no fertilizers, no special treatment. 89 crops entered the trial. Modern agricultural science was represented by genetically modified drought-tolerant soybeans that cost seed companies $200 million to develop. Improved wheat varieties bred specifically for arid regions. Hybrid corn designed to survive with minimal irrigation. These weren't average crops. These were the best drought-resistant varieties that modern agriculture could produce. But buried in the list, almost as an afterthought, was entry number 43, Phaseolus acutifolius, commonly known as the tepary bean. The seeds came from the Tohono O'odham Nation in southern Arizona, where families had been saving these same genetics for over 4,000 years. While other entries had detailed breeding histories and genetic modification patents, the tepary beans came with just a handwritten note: plant when summer rains begin. To understand why tepary beans dominated this trial, you need to understand where they come from. The Sonoran Desert receives less than 10 inches of rain per year. Summer temperatures routinely exceed 110 degrees. Winter nights can drop below freezing. This is one of the harshest agricultural environments on Earth, yet the Tohono O'odham people have grown tepary beans here continuously for over 4 millennia. Archaeological evidence from Ventana Cave shows tepary bean cultivation dating back to 2300 BCE. While ancient Mesopotamians were developing irrigation systems for wheat and barley, desert peoples were already perfecting dry land agriculture with crops that needed almost no water. The difference in agricultural philosophy is striking. Modern farming fights the environment. We pump groundwater, install irrigation systems, and create artificial microclimates to grow crops that aren't adapted to local conditions. Traditional tepary bean cultivation works with the environment. The plants are scattered across the landscape to maximize water collection from rare rainfall events. But the real secret isn't just cultural knowledge. It's 4,000 years of natural selection. Every generation of tepary beans faced the same brutal test: survive desert conditions or die without reproducing. Only the most drought-adapted genetics survived. Modern plant breeding, by contrast, typically optimizes for yield under ideal conditions. The result is crops that produce more food when everything goes right, but collapse when conditions get tough. When Dr. Parker's team began analyzing why tepary beans outperformed everything else, they discovered a plant that had evolved sophisticated water conservation mechanisms that modern agriculture had never bothered to study. The leaf structure alone reveals 4 distinct adaptations that most crops lack entirely. First, tepary bean leaves have an unusually thick, waxy cuticle that reduces water loss through evaporation by 60% compared to standard soybeans. The stomata, tiny pores that allow gas exchange, are smaller and more numerous, allowing the plant to regulate water loss with incredible precision. During the hottest parts of the day, tepary beans can essentially shut down water loss while still maintaining photosynthesis. Second, the root architecture is completely different from modern crops. While typical soybeans develop a taproot with lateral branches, tepary beans create what researchers call a water harvesting network. The roots spread horizontally up to 6 feet from the plant, with thousands of fine root hairs positioned to capture moisture from the smallest rainfall events. Third, tepary beans have developed cellular water storage capacity that rivals desert succulents. Specialized cells in the stems and leaves can store water at concentrations that would kill most plants. During drought periods, the plant can survive for weeks, using only stored moisture while continuing to photosynthesize and even flower. But perhaps most importantly, tepary beans have evolved what researchers call metabolic flexibility. Unlike modern crops that shut down during stress, tepary beans can switch between different metabolic pathways depending on water availability. When water is abundant, they grow rapidly. When drought hits, they shift into survival mode while still producing seeds. After 3 years of brutal testing, the results were undeniable. Tepary beans produced 847 pounds of protein per acre using only 2 inches of water annually. The second best performer, a genetically modified drought-tolerant soybean variety that cost millions to develop, managed just 201 pounds per acre under the same conditions. But raw yield numbers only tell part of the story. When researchers analyzed protein content, they discovered another shocking advantage. Tepary beans averaged 23% protein by weight compared to 18% for the best-performing modern soybeans. Factor in the yield difference, and tepary beans delivered over 500% more protein per acre than their closest modern competitor. The nutritional analysis revealed why indigenous peoples could survive primarily on tepary beans during drought years. Unlike most plant proteins, tepary beans provide all essential amino acids in ratios that closely match human nutritional needs. The lysine content, often the limiting amino acid in plant-based diets, was 40% higher than modern soybeans. Perhaps most importantly for our water-scarce future, tepary beans achieved unprecedented water efficiency. They produced 423 pounds of protein per inch of water applied. The most efficient modern crop in the trial managed just 87 pounds of protein per inch of water. In a world where agriculture consumes 70% of freshwater resources, this difference isn't just impressive, it's revolutionary. If you're finding this data as mind-blowing as I am, hit that subscribe button right now. We dive deep into agricultural science every week, and what I'm about to show you about tepary bean genetics makes everything we've covered so far look like just the beginning. The molecular mechanisms behind this 420% advantage will change how you think about plant evolution itself. Dr. Parker's team didn't stop at measuring yields. They wanted to understand the genetic basis for tepary bean superiority, so they partnered with the University of California's Genomics Lab to sequence the complete tepary bean genome. What they discovered reads like a 4,000-year genetic engineering project, except it was accomplished entirely through natural selection. The tepary bean genome contains over 300 genes related to drought tolerance that are either absent or inactive in modern soybeans. These aren't random mutations. They represent a coordinated genetic program for surviving extreme water stress. Genes controlling root development, cellular water storage, metabolic flexibility, and stress response proteins have all been optimized through millennia of natural selection. One particularly fascinating discovery involves heat shock proteins. When temperatures exceed 100 degrees, most crop plants begin producing stress proteins that consume enormous amounts of energy and often fail to prevent cellular damage. Tepary beans produce a unique class of heat shock proteins that not only protect cellular structures but actually improve photosynthetic efficiency under high temperature conditions. The water storage genes are equally remarkable. Tepary beans can concentrate solutes in their cells to levels that would be toxic to most plants while maintaining normal metabolic function. This allows them to store water at much higher densities than typical crops, essentially turning every cell into a microscopic water reservoir. But perhaps the most sobering discovery was what modern agriculture has lost. Genetic analysis of heritage crop varieties revealed that modern plant breeding has systematically eliminated drought tolerance genes in favor of yield optimization under ideal conditions. We've spent the last century breeding crops that perform well with abundant water and fertilizer, while discarding the genetic tools needed for climate resilience. The secret to tepary bean drought survival isn't just efficient water collection, it's sophisticated water storage at the cellular level. Each tepary bean cell functions as a microscopic water bank, capable of storing moisture at concentrations that would kill most plants while maintaining normal metabolic function. This is accomplished through a process called osmotic adjustment. Tepary beans can concentrate solutes, primarily sugars, amino acids, and specialized proteins, in their cells to create powerful water-attracting forces. These concentrated solutions pull water from surrounding tissues and even from soil moisture that other plants cannot access. The concentrated cellular solutions serve multiple functions. During drought, they act as water reservoirs that can sustain the plant for weeks without external moisture. During rainfall, they create powerful osmotic gradients that allow tepary beans to absorb water much more rapidly than typical crops. The plant can essentially supercharge its water uptake when moisture becomes available. But maintaining these high concentration solutions requires specialized cellular machinery. Tepary beans produce unique proteins that protect cellular structures from damage caused by concentrated salts and sugars. These compatible solutes allow normal enzyme function even under conditions that would denature proteins in most plants. The result is a plant that can continue photosynthesis and growth even under severe water stress. While most crops shut down all non-essential functions during drought, tepary beans can maintain up to 60% of normal metabolic activity using only stored cellular water. This allows them to continue flowering and seed production even during extended dry periods, exceeding 100 square feet of soil surface. Tepary beans don't just survive drought, they've evolved photosynthetic mechanisms that actually become more efficient under heat and water stress. This contradicts everything we know about plant physiology, where stress typically reduces photosynthetic capacity. Most crops use C3 photosynthesis, which becomes increasingly inefficient as temperatures rise above 85 degrees Fahrenheit. At temperatures above 100 degrees, C3 photosynthesis essentially shuts down. Tepary beans have evolved a modified photosynthetic pathway that shares characteristics with both C3 and C4 photosynthesis, allowing them to maintain high efficiency even at extreme temperatures. The key innovation involves carbon dioxide concentration mechanisms within the leaf cells. Tepary beans can actively pump carbon dioxide to sites where photosynthesis occurs, maintaining high concentrations even when leaf pores close to conserve water. This allows continued photosynthesis during the hottest parts of the day when other plants shut down completely. Thermal imaging reveals the practical impact of this adaptation. During midday heat, when air temperatures exceed 110 degrees, most crop plants essentially go dormant. Their leaves heat up to dangerous levels and photosynthesis stops. Tepary bean leaves maintain active metabolism and actually show slightly lower temperatures than surrounding plants, indicating continued transpiration and cooling. This photosynthetic advantage compounds over an entire growing season. While modern crops lose weeks of productive time during heat waves, tepary beans continue growing and producing throughout the summer. The cumulative effect explains much of their yield advantage under drought conditions. One of the most remarkable discoveries about tepary beans is their ability to completely reorganize their metabolism in response to water stress. Most plants have relatively fixed metabolic pathways. When conditions become unfavorable, they simply slow down or shut down. Tepary beans can actually switch to entirely different metabolic strategies. Under normal conditions, tepary beans use standard plant metabolism focused on rapid growth and high productivity. But as water stress increases, they activate what researchers call drought metabolism, a completely different set of biochemical pathways optimized for survival rather than growth. This metabolic switching involves hundreds of different enzymes and biochemical reactions. Growth-related enzymes are downregulated while stress protection enzymes increase dramatically. Cellular energy that would normally support rapid growth is redirected to maintaining cellular integrity and continuing essential functions like photosynthesis and reproduction. The speed of this metabolic switching is particularly impressive. Within 6 hours of water stress beginning, tepary beans show measurable changes in enzyme activity and metabolic pathway utilization. Full metabolic reorganization occurs within 48 hours. Most modern crops require a week or more to show similar responses, and they never achieve the complete metabolic flexibility that tepary beans demonstrate. Perhaps most importantly for agricultural productivity, tepary beans can maintain reproductive function even under severe stress. While most crops abort flowers and stop seed production during drought, tepary beans continue flowering and can produce viable seeds using their alternative metabolic pathways. This ensures crop production even during the worst growing conditions. The most puzzling aspect of tepary bean performance was how they continued producing seeds during drought conditions that completely shut down reproduction in modern crops. Seed production is typically the first thing plants sacrifice during stress, yet tepary beans seemed to prioritize reproduction even under extreme water limitation. Detailed analysis revealed that tepary beans have evolved what researchers call reproductive resilience, the ability to complete their life cycle under conditions that prevent most plants from reproducing. This involves fundamental changes in how the plant allocates resources between survival and reproduction. Most plants follow a simple rule during stress: survive first, reproduce later. Tepary beans have evolved a more sophisticated strategy that maintains reproductive capacity even under severe stress. They accomplish this through the metabolic flexibility we discussed earlier, using alternative biochemical pathways that are more energy efficient during drought conditions. The practical result is continued seed production throughout the growing season, regardless of water availability. While modern crops might produce seeds only during favorable periods, tepary beans can produce multiple seed crops throughout the year, taking advantage of any available moisture to complete reproductive cycles. Remarkably, seeds produced under drought stress maintain full viability and vigor. Laboratory germination tests showed that tepary bean seeds produced during the most severe drought conditions germinated at rates exceeding 90% and produced vigorous seedlings. This suggests that the reproductive resilience mechanisms don't compromise seed quality. The Arizona trials subjected all crops to extreme temperature fluctuations that mimicked climate change projections for the southwestern United States. Daily temperatures regularly exceeded 115 degrees Fahrenheit, while night temperatures could drop to near freezing during winter months. Most crops showed severe stress symptoms, but tepary beans seemed to thrive under these extreme conditions. The key to tepary bean temperature tolerance lies in their sophisticated heat shock protein system. While most plants produce generic stress proteins that consume enormous energy and provide limited protection, tepary beans produce specialized proteins that actually improve cellular function under high temperature conditions. These specialized proteins protect essential enzymes from heat damage while maintaining photosynthetic and metabolic efficiency. Laboratory tests showed that tepary bean enzymes remain fully functional at temperatures that completely denature similar enzymes from modern crops. This allows continued growth and productivity under conditions that shut down most agricultural plants. Temperature tolerance also involves membrane stability. Plant cell membranes typically become leaky at high temperatures, causing cellular dysfunction and eventual death. Tepary beans have evolved membrane compositions that remain stable and functional even at temperatures exceeding 120 degrees Fahrenheit. The practical impact is remarkable. During heat waves that cause modern crops to wilt and stop growing, tepary beans continue normal development. They flower, produce seeds, and even show accelerated growth during periods of extreme heat that would kill most agricultural plants. The Arizona trials used standard agricultural clay soil with no amendments, but researchers noticed that tepary beans seemed equally comfortable in every soil type they encountered. Additional testing revealed that tepary beans can thrive in soil conditions that severely limit most crop plants. Soil pH tolerance is particularly impressive. Most crops require carefully managed soil pH between 6.0 and 7.5 for optimal growth. Tepary beans show no growth reduction in soils, with pH values ranging from 6.0 to 9.5, a range that includes everything from slightly acidic to highly alkaline conditions common in desert soils. Salt tolerance is equally remarkable. Desert soils often have high salt concentrations that prevent most agricultural plants from establishing. Tepary beans can grow in soil salt concentrations that would kill modern soybeans within days. They accomplish this through specialized salt exclusion mechanisms in their roots and salt storage systems in their leaves. Perhaps most importantly for sustainable agriculture, tepary beans show exceptional nutrient efficiency. They can produce normal yields in soils with nutrient levels that severely limit modern crop production. This is accomplished through enhanced root-soil interactions that improve nutrient availability and specialized internal nutrient recycling systems. Tepary beans form extensive mycorrhizal associations with soil fungi, creating underground networks that can extend the effective root system by hundreds of feet. These fungal partnerships improve both water and nutrient acquisition while providing protection against soil-borne pathogens. Modern crops often show limited mycorrhizal development, missing this crucial soil relationship. As legumes, tepary beans form symbiotic relationships with nitrogen-fixing bacteria that convert atmospheric nitrogen into plant-usable forms. However, their nitrogen fixation capacity far exceeds that of modern legume crops, providing another explanation for their superior performance under low-input conditions. Laboratory measurements showed that established tepary bean plants can fix over 180 pounds of nitrogen per acre annually, nearly triple the nitrogen fixation rate of modern soybeans. This biological nitrogen production eliminates the need for synthetic fertilizers while actually improving soil fertility for subsequent crops. The enhanced nitrogen fixation results from hosting more diverse bacterial communities. While modern legumes typically associate with one or two bacterial strains, tepary beans host complex bacterial communities that include multiple nitrogen-fixing species with different environmental tolerances and capabilities. This biological nitrogen production has cumulative benefits. Soil nitrogen levels in tepary bean plots increased each year of the trial, while control plots showed continued nitrogen depletion. The nitrogen fixed by tepary beans becomes available to subsequent crops, creating a natural fertility cycle that improves soil productivity over time. The economic value is substantial. At current fertilizer prices, the nitrogen fixed by tepary beans represents over $300 per acre in fertility value annually. This biological nitrogen production also eliminates the environmental impacts associated with synthetic fertilizer manufacturing and application. Throughout the 3-year trial, researchers noticed that tepary beans showed remarkable resistance to pests and diseases that severely affected other crops. This resistance wasn't due to pesticide applications. The trial used no chemical treatments, but rather to evolved defense mechanisms. Physical defenses include specialized leaf surface structures that deter insect feeding. Tepary bean leaves are covered with microscopic trichomes, hair-like structures that make feeding difficult for many insects. The leaf surface also produces waxy compounds that interfere with insect attachment and movement. Chemical defenses are equally sophisticated. Tepary beans produce over 40 different secondary metabolites that provide protection against insects, fungi, and bacteria. These compounds are concentrated in seeds and young tissues, the parts of the plant most vulnerable to damage and most important for reproduction. Disease resistance is particularly impressive. Common legume diseases that devastate modern soybean crops show limited ability to establish on tepary bean plants. Laboratory tests revealed that tepary beans produce antifungal and antibacterial compounds that actively inhibit pathogen growth. The practical result is dramatically reduced pest management requirements. While modern crop plots in the trial required multiple interventions for pest and disease control, tepary bean plots needed no treatments throughout the 3-year study period. This represents significant cost savings and environmental benefits. If you've made it this far, you're clearly someone who appreciates real scientific depth. Subscribe right now because what I'm about to reveal about the agricultural implications of this research will completely change how you think about the future of farming. The final sections cover information that could reshape global food security. The Tepary bean research takes on urgent significance when viewed against climate change projections for global agriculture. Current models predict that major crop-producing regions will experience increased drought, higher temperatures, and more extreme weather events, exactly the conditions where Tepary beans excel. Climate models suggest that corn yields could decline by 30% in major producing regions by 2050 due to increased heat and drought stress. Wheat and soybean yields face similar challenges. Tepary beans, by contrast, would likely see increased productivity as conditions shift toward their evolutionary preferences. Water scarcity represents perhaps the greatest threat to future food security. Agriculture currently consumes 70% of global freshwater resources, and climate change is reducing water availability in most major crop-producing regions. Tepary beans' 400% water efficiency advantage could be crucial for maintaining food production under water-scarce conditions. Geographic modeling suggests that Tepary bean suitable growing areas will expand significantly as global temperatures rise and precipitation patterns shift. Regions that become too hot and dry for traditional crops could become prime Tepary bean production areas, potentially offsetting productivity losses elsewhere. The protein production advantages are particularly important for global food security. Tepary beans provide complete protein with all essential amino acids, making them capable of replacing animal protein sources that require much more water and land. Their climate resilience could ensure protein security even under severe climate change scenarios. Despite their remarkable performance advantages, Tepary beans face significant challenges for large-scale agricultural adoption. Modern agriculture is optimized for crops with large seeds, uniform growth habits, and predictable harvest timing. Tepary beans present unique challenges in each of these areas. The small seed size creates harvesting challenges. Modern combine harvesters are designed for crops like soybeans and corn with large, uniform seeds. Tepary beans require specialized harvesting equipment or significant modifications to existing machinery. However, agricultural engineers have developed prototype harvesters specifically designed for small-seeded crops. Variable growth habits also complicate mechanization. Modern crops are bred for uniform plant height and synchronized maturation to enable efficient mechanical harvesting. Tepary beans retain more natural variation in growth patterns, requiring either plant breeding for uniformity or more flexible harvesting approaches. Market development represents another significant challenge. Consumers are unfamiliar with Tepary beans, and food processing infrastructure is designed for conventional crops. However, the exceptional nutritional profile and unique flavor of Tepary beans could create premium market opportunities that offset production challenges. Agricultural research institutions are actively working to address these challenges. Plant breeding programs are developing Tepary bean varieties with more uniform growth habits while maintaining drought tolerance. Genetic marker technologies allow breeders to track drought tolerance traits while selecting for improved agricultural characteristics. Economic modeling suggests that Tepary beans could be profitable for farmers even with current production challenges. The elimination of irrigation and fertilizer costs, combined with premium pricing for drought-resistant protein crops, could provide attractive returns. Climate change will likely increase the economic advantages as traditional crops become more expensive to produce. The Tepary bean research highlights the crucial importance of integrating traditional agricultural knowledge with modern scientific methods. The Tohono O'odham people developed sophisticated understanding of Tepary bean cultivation over 4 millennia, knowledge that modern agriculture is only beginning to appreciate. Traditional Tepary bean cultivation involves practices that seem counterintuitive to modern agriculture but prove scientifically sound. Scatter planting maximizes water collection from rainfall events. Minimal soil disturbance preserves soil structure and mycorrhizal networks. Timing planting with seasonal rainfall patterns optimizes plant establishment. Indigenous seed-saving practices maintained much higher genetic diversity than modern agriculture. Traditional communities saved seeds from multiple plant varieties and selected for different characteristics depending on growing conditions. This genetic diversity provides the raw material for developing climate-adapted crops. Universities are increasingly recognizing the value of traditional agricultural knowledge and developing collaborative research programs with indigenous communities. These partnerships combine traditional understanding with modern analytical tools to develop more sustainable and resilient agricultural systems. The integration of traditional knowledge raises important questions about intellectual property and benefit sharing. Indigenous communities developed the genetic resources and cultivation knowledge that make tepary beans valuable for modern agriculture. Fair compensation and partnership arrangements are essential for ethical development of traditional crop resources. The tepary bean research points toward a fundamental transformation in how we think about agriculture in arid and semi-arid regions. Rather than fighting desert conditions with irrigation and climate control, we could work with natural systems using crops evolved for extreme environments. Future desert agriculture might involve diverse crop systems that include tepary beans alongside other drought-resistant plants. These polyculture systems could maximize water efficiency while providing diverse nutritional profiles and improving soil health through complementary root systems and nutrient cycling. Precision agriculture technologies could optimize tepary bean production by monitoring soil moisture, tracking plant stress levels, and applying minimal water inputs at optimal timing. These technologies could maximize the water efficiency advantages while ensuring reliable crop production. Global adoption of tepary beans and similar drought-resistant crops could significantly improve food security in water-scarce regions, while reducing pressure on freshwater resources. The protein production advantages are particularly important for regions where animal agriculture is not sustainable due to water limitations. The tepary bean success story is encouraging researchers to investigate other traditional crops with climate adaptation potential. Gene banks contain thousands of traditional crop varieties that might harbor similar drought tolerance mechanisms. Systematic evaluation of these genetic resources could identify additional crops for climate-resilient agriculture. The ultimate vision is agricultural systems that work with, rather than against, environmental conditions. By learning from traditional crops like tepary beans and integrating this knowledge with modern technology, we can develop farming systems that are both highly productive and environmentally sustainable. 4,000 years ago, indigenous farmers in the Sonoran Desert began selecting seeds from the most drought-resistant bean plants they could find. Generation after generation, they saved seeds only from plants that thrived in conditions that would kill most crops. They created what modern science now recognizes as one of the most climate-resilient food plants on Earth. When scientists tested 89 drought-resistant crops in conditions designed to simulate our climate future, this ancient desert bean didn't just survive, it dominated. 420% better yields than the best modern alternatives. 500% more protein per gallon of water. Complete amino acid profiles that could replace animal protein in human diets. As climate change makes traditional agriculture increasingly difficult, the answers we need might not come from high-tech laboratories or genetic engineering companies. They might come from the wisdom of indigenous farmers who spent millennia developing crops that thrive under the exact conditions we're heading toward. If this deep dive into agricultural science fascinated you, you absolutely need to see our analysis of ancient water harvesting systems that can irrigate crops using only morning dew. Subscribe right now and let me know in the comments what traditional farming technique you want us to investigate next. The solutions to our climate future might be hiding in our agricultural past. The data doesn't lie. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Click right here to discover more ancient agricultural wisdom that modern science is just beginning to understand.